Hello, welcome to my presentation, Sustainable Business Strategies. I'm delighted and grateful for the invitation by David Bozward, and this is what I would like to talk about. What's in a word? Sustainability in business. What is the context? What does it mean? And are there any business models out there that allow us to integrate sustainability? Sustainable business strategies, what could it be? How could they look like? We will then apply all this a bit more conceptual thinking to two examples of existing successful businesses that, in my view, already integrate sustainability deeply into their strategic setup and day-to-day operations. Riverford, for some in the UK, well known, for others maybe not. It's a organic fresh food delivery company with focus of groceries, particularly vegetables and also dairy products. The second example is from the fashion industry, a Swedish designer who runs now a multi-million business. And I'll finish off with some practical takeaways for businesses and some tips and do's, what you could do right now. And I look forward to your questions on the way or towards the end. So, who is Inge Hill? I am called by others a so-called pracademic. That is, I am publishing in highly theoretical journals at 3- and 4-star levels soon. Already I have a 3-star publication. And I was a full-time academic before, and I have run my own businesses, started 2 service businesses, won a couple of awards, and now it's only my leisure time I spend directly interacting with businesses, for example, as chair of the Prince's Trust launch panels. And bringing that together, I think, is a unique combination that can lead to a lot of practical outcomes for academia in as much as businesses. So what is sustainable then? And sustainability. If we go to the Cambridge English Dictionary, this is what we find under a definition: the quality of causing little or no damage to the environment and therefore able to continue for a long time. So the core aspect here of the definition is that something can be continued and that damage or exploitation of the environment is minimized. It doesn't say social or ecological environment, it simply says environment. The way it is now looked at in the context of business, it is affecting how business is affecting the social and the ecological environment in the ways of doing business. Therefore, it needs to be, in my ideal world, an underpinning principle for the way of doing business. And it's not new. Some businesses have done it for quite a while. And on the other hand, it is very new for some businesses who haven't considered it at all and should now, particularly in the light of the pandemic we have experienced. Academic theories in this area exist, but they're lacking clarity in relation to the cost and benefits of sustainability for doing business. Lynch, for example, in his textbook Strategic Management, particular very unique chapter of green strategy, points this out, if anybody wants to read up on that. There are a number of practice papers available, and increasingly sustainability is picked up by consultancies, particularly the large consultancies such as the Boston Consulting Group, McKinsey, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Deloitte, and the like. In the context of the discussion of sustainability, there is often the mentioning of the so-called triple bottom line. Again, nothing new, has been around for 20 years. The traditional old-style Keynesian thinking was very much talking about the economic or financial bottom line, which is here in pink or red. The social and environmental aspects have then been added as an important angle to consider at the same level and given the same importance than the economic bottom line. What I like about this visualization is specifically it shows the overlaps. Between environment and economic, it's of course always important to consider if you haven't got a viable business, it's no point in being environmentally friendly if you don't survive financially. Therefore, the setup already needs to consider how a business can be less damaging to the environment. That means, for example, more than just some of the little sentences we find in emails. Think before you print this email. This is a valuable attempt, but it's only scratching the surface just a little bit. And then, of course, there are the social aspects, and these are very much looking at the impact on people in society, but also the impact on staff. And there is some level of social justice indicated through equitable here in this graph. The adjective bearable here points out the overlap between social and the environment, and is particularly indicating that human behavior needs to be able to be bared by the environment. That is, if you cut trees because you need the wood for production, that you also plant new trees, so there is some form of circularity happening. Overall, you can see sustainability is in the ideal overlap of the three areas. And yes, all that can be considered by businesses and is done so. What's the relevance and context of discussing this now more so than before? Well, apart from current pandemics, the area of sustainability has been at the key international interest for quite a while. For example, through the Sustainable Development Goals published in 2015 by the United Nations. And what you can see here are 17 goals, which are the sustainability goals, from no poverty to partnerships for the goals, and considering a number of aspects in terms of well-being of people, social justice, and particular what I want to look at in a bit more detail is 8 and 9, decent work and economic growth, and industry innovation and infrastructure. Apart from identifying some goals, there are also targets associated with these goals. Remember, these goals have been out since 15, we are in 20, and there are serious concerns that the goal to reach all those goals by 30 is far away. So there is a lot of change and adaptation needed for all of us and also businesses. Let's look at what Goal 8, decent work and economic growth, means. We need to keep in mind, without a sustainable, viable business, there is no need to consider social and environmental aspects as an add-on, but it needs to be integrated in the setup, but it still needs to be a viable business. There are the aspects of sustainable economic growth. How we define that, that is another matter. There are many measures out there. How to diversify, innovate, and upgrade for economic productivity. Again, productivity means to use as little resources as possible because everything costs money. Thus, it makes business sense to be sustainable, as one example. Others are around job creation and growing enterprises. What kind of growth is then the big question. To improve resource efficiency, again, it makes business sense to do so. But then distribute the financial gain and profits also to the benefit of society and other stakeholders. Full employment and decent work with equal pay, looking at equitably, what the triple bottom line pointed out, promoting youth employment, education and training, and many others of these goals. For 9, industry, innovation and infrastructure, I just want to highlight 2 targets, the one on developing sustainable, resilient and inclusive infrastructures, and to upgrade all industries and infrastructures for sustainability. That is a really important area. So you see, sustainability is the word here, but also inclusive infrastructures. And inclusivity is an important aspect of how to set up business operations and strategic goals, either for new businesses or for those who want to become more sustainable. And our examples will show to us how that works. So, as a quick interim conclusion, there is a case for increasing sustainability. It makes business sense, therefore it's also in the self-interest of businesses, because following the Sustainable Development Goals is reducing cost, hopefully, if done well, in using resources more efficiently, increasing productivity, etc. But also increasingly governments expect business to comply with SDGs, thus it's a matter of compliance, and some of these aspects have been crystallized in laws in terms of the Slavery Act as one example, and also increasing consumer pressures that businesses should act more responsibly and ethically in the way they act. And therefore this will have an impact on buying decisions. If businesses don't do that, consumers, all of us, have the chance to vote with our feet, and some of us are already doing that. So from a business viewpoint, how do you go about becoming more sustainable? A strategic approach will definitely help a lot. And here are 3 steps outlined that are helpful in order to become more sustainable for a business. First of all, a strategic review and assessment, an audit. Where is the business and how is it performing economically in the environment area and in the social area? Develop strategic options, not just using a different supplier, but much more fundamentally, how can a business be set up? We talk about business modeling. And thirdly, then, how do you go about implementing those changes that they work in the long run for the business and society and the environment? This very simple 3-step process is what we teach at the RAU on master's modules. I teach them myself for the MBA, but also for various masters that are being offered. Do talk to us if you want to learn more. I talked about sustainable business modeling. This has been at the core of my thinking for quite a while. And in 2015, I published a book. While in the title it's called Startup, it discusses in deep detail how to set up a new organization, and applicable for existing ones as well, in a sustainable way, already integrating aspects of sustainability, even though at that point in time the SDGs hadn't even been published. What you see here is an overview of the business model. It's called the business model cube. And that is something that is really important to consider. This business model cube has, as all cubes or dices, 6 faces, and each face has 2 sub-areas. And that's the important aspect of business modeling. All these areas need to be integrated, need to be deeply linking to each other and form a whole that make a business turn over and act sustainably. The areas are, for example, frameworks, internal frameworks in legal issues. And that looks at the legal form as such. There have recently been new legal forms added, and the UK is internationally leading in specifically sustainable legal forms, such as the community interest company, and also the CIO, the charitable incorporate organization. These are forms that allow for a constitution that profits are maintained within the organization, have to be given to a particular social or sustainable purpose. It is also, for example, talking about an asset lock, that nobody owns the company or any assets within the company, but it's owned by the company as such. And that if a company closes down, that these assets have to be passed on to a similar type of organization, such as another CIC or CIO. And that is a really important way of maintaining sustainability. something can be continued for a long period of time. Naturally, legal issues are all the most important laws that a company has to comply with within a particular country and also internationally. It looks at operations and setup and business processes. It looks at how money is being brought into the business, that is through sales, but also what is being sold, the kind of products, the kind of services, but also how the money is being spent, and therefore what resources are brought in return for the money. Another really important aspect that needs to be done in a sustainable way, and their supply chain management has done a good job and looked at that in more detail. There is customer focus, marketing and sales, market and industry research findings. That is, you need to be very clear and on an ongoing basis, analyze what the customers want and react towards that, and also understand the industry. And that is really important. Otherwise, you might miss changing customer trends and therefore not change your product or services quickly enough. And that's how many businesses had to close down, such as companies like Waterstones, physical books, who missed the train to quickly adapt to online reading and therefore had to close down, as one example. A strategy, which is exactly looking at this process of making the areas of a business fit together, which is usually operations, finance, staffing, etc., but also how you position a business within the external environment and have the internal capabilities to match the challenges that are externally there. For example, understanding the legal environment so you can comply in your operations with what is required in your particular subject area. And if you don't, you get into trouble with the law. And a very important aspect that no other business model has considered so far, and that is the ongoing evaluation, monitoring, and interpretation of how you comply with principles of sustainability. So, moving on from there, we need to look at how does this look practically. Two examples I brought along, and one is Riverfoot. Live live on the veg is one of their mottos. Organic vegetables grown for flavor and delivered fresh from our farms to our doors. I have to say I am biased because I am a very happy customer of Riverfoot and therefore also have the perspective not just as the business strategy analyst, but also as the customer who looks critically at how I am being treated in as much as what businesses and processes I experience as a customer. The image I brought here is on the one hand how on their website from the beginning they react to existing laws and pointing out how they meet them, the modern slavery statement. So one example in referring to not using low-paid or unpaid labor in as much as complying with all health and safety and migration laws. And naturally the gender pay gap, again, putting it explicitly on their website shows their commitment to making this work. They have a turnover of 70 million in 2017, so we're not talking about a small scale lifestyle type little business. And it was founded in 1986 by Guy Watson, who has founded that, used his family farm, which he inherited as the starting point, and has now a majority employee-owned business, and he only holds part of the shares. And I think we need to have a look at that. I'll stop the share here now in order to take us to the website and show you more aspects of how sustainability and the three aspects, social, environmental, and economic, have been integrated. What you can see here now is the website of Riverfoot Organic Farmers, nicely done on a carrot, the outline of a carrot, and it's the website Ethics and Ethos. They explain very explicitly, and that's the aspect of communicating sustainability very well, how and why they're food is organic, who they work with, linking in with current debates, talking about packaging, waste, which is also an aspect of environmental responsibility, to use as little packaging. Just staying with the way of how you can integrate reduction of waste and therefore increase efficiencies in as much as reduce the exploitation of new unique resources. Their packaging is in card boxes. These card boxes are slightly coated so they can be reused and are easily foldable. That applies to the big boxes. It applies to smaller boxes where various types of fruit or vegetables are delivered in to avoid plastic. And customers can give back this packaging. So it's already two ways of doing that, in using recycled materials to create the boxes, in as much as allowing customers to give the packaging back and they are being reused. And that even is possible within the pandemic time, as on cardboard and the type of cardboard they use, they just leave it for 24 hours and then use it again. Just one small example, but it has, in terms of the day-to-day running of the business, huge cost implications. Other aspects are ethics, ethos, is also how the customers are considered, and that it's part of a co-creation process. By the way, this is Guy Watson, who is the founder, and as it says, over 50,000 deliveries a week now. You can see the partnerships they have with other companies, but you also see the charities, the social projects they run, and how they support farming across the world. That is a really important aspect. Further, the way they communicate with customers is on a regular basis, proactively, through, if something hasn't worked, mistakes happen, they proactively send out an email within 12 hours, apologize and offer a refund, for example, if something wasn't included in the box. That happens, but again, it is the customer service management which is key for their success as well, and how they communicate. So more so, they focus on customer retention and not on greedy more and more customers. During the pandemic, suddenly everybody wanted fresh grocery delivered. Every customer got the confirmation that they are indeed considered valuable, and they didn't take on any more customers until they were able to do so. And we had our reassured delivery because we were existing customers. Very important to be valued as a customer. What other aspects are important? We look at the supply chain, the kind of farmers they have in their supply chain. It's not just all UK based, but they have a supply chain of organic farmers from across the world, and are able to demonstrate how importing some fruit from France or the Netherlands is not more of a cost to them, and therefore to damaging the environment, than having a lorry coming from northern Scotland. And again, it is the communication about that, in as much as the cost efficiency that comes in there, to again keep the end customer happy. And then the last aspect of making Riverford sustainable looks at a number of aspects we as a business analyst can study, but also as a consumer, we would be interested in the sustainability report, which is in detail reporting of how they act on all aspects of sustainability. The sustainable packaging I talked about already, how they support local farmers. Again, reducing food miles is important, but sometimes it's not always possible. Looking at food miles, looking at waste, and looking at the energy they use for running their businesses. I highly invite you to have a look, because it's a really valuable source of information, but also a company that has for a long while acted sustainably and is a multi-million turnover business. Another company I promised to talk about was Gudrun Sjöden. Gudrun Sjöden is a Swedish designer founded by this wonderful lady here with the white hair. This is Gudrun Sjöden, the founder. For over 40 years, she has been operating sustainably. starting off as a fashion designer, learning from the design industry very briefly, and then moving into opening her own shops to having now a multi-million business with a turnover of over 86 million in 2017. So how has she done that? There's a lot available if you click under Goodwin's World and you get to this page. She does that in the selection of suppliers, in the selection of materials from the very beginning, the relationship she has with her suppliers. Let's go into eco-thinking. What you have here is an overview of everything regarding environment and ecological thinking. And the slogan, which I also have on the slide, "Colourful with a Green Soul," is her core motto, crystallizing how she wants to do business. She came out with her own environmental labeling. She has a clear conduct of developed and how she works with the suppliers and what she expects the suppliers to do. Since 2001, there is an active code of conduct with all the suppliers, and the suppliers are checked out if they comply on a regular basis. And as she says, with some, she's been working for over 80 years. Again, sustainability in supporting many small-scale manufacturers. And there's a number of initiatives and standards she's complying with. Very good reading and a very good examples of how you can make it work. As many other companies, she's involved in environmental projects where she donates money to charities all year round. But important is also strategically, our environmental thinking is the section that lays out how she strategically integrates sustainability thinking into the business. And that is a really important aspect of that. And lastly, I wanted to point out is 12 examples of how I want to work for the environment. That is a fantastic example I use in teaching for how you can strategically address a commitment to the environment through a statement. In this case, it's 12 statements she makes and how she has indeed realized them. She talks about her own label, the less waste of resources, more of recycling, and that is part of how a business setup can contribute to that. Just a minor point about recycle more. She owns all the retail shops that exist across the world. There's one in the UK, in London, in Covent Garden. And the important aspect there is customers can come in and pay, in quotes, with a used garment. As long as it's still in good condition, they can trade it in a particular corner against another piece of garment also brought in by other customers. We either grow out of particular sizes or we just grow tired of a particular type of color or piece of clothing. Instead of giving it to charity, you can make something out of it and swap it with something. And this process is managed by the retail shop. There's a lot more to learn if you want to research this further, how the business has realized that. I will go back to my slides now and just highlighting again, it is the sourcing of materials where there is a lot about ecologically and how it's being then further developed from cotton to the final garment. It's the materials for packaging. She uses cloth bags, no plastic bags ever, or paper bags, and the kind of customer service that is being offered within the stores. I mentioned the swapping of clothes, where it's managed by the store between customers, but it's also about the use of drinks that are being offered. It's always using glass, never paper cups. It's always using distilled water, possibly some high juice. There's no waste if she can avoid it, etc. So where does that lead us? Takeaway and tips. Well, you can do it. Every business can do it. It is important to involve stakeholders, not just staff, but also customers, suppliers. Important is to use different leadership structures. It doesn't have to be all coming from the top, but it needs to have buy-in from the top if you want to make changes in the organization. Reviewing mission, vision, and strategic goals. The example of Gudrun Søren and her strategic goals is a very helpful example of how from the beginning you can set up a business, but also how you can change the strategic goals you have to something like that. Important is, it is a long journey, therefore start small in one area in the business and celebrate the successes you have on the way. And be certain to be very clear and careful in how you implement it. Again, get your staff on board. Some more detail on the actual implementation. It's important that you start with clearly defined purpose and goals, but that you do that in collaboration with stakeholders. You start in one area, develop operational targets. What would you like to change and how? And then set smart targets for outputs and outcomes to achieve sustainability. Define roles, responsibilities, and timings. To identify topics then for evaluation measures that are available already through social impact and social return on investment measures in databases you can use to measure your progress. Monitor on a regular basis what you do and how you change, and celebrate with your stakeholders. It's a long journey and milestones are very important. That's all from me from now. I hope you enjoyed it and I look forward to your questions. Just as a last slide, I mentioned some publications. Here is my book chapter coming forward, Ethics and Sustainability in Business and for Entrepreneurship. That is in the proof stage, so it will come out in 2020, written with my colleague Jonathan Scott. And my own book, where I used the business model from startup. There is a link to the Macmillan website, but it's also available on Amazon. I look forward to your questions now.